Hello guys, so in this video I'm going to be showing you how to create this splash screen animation using Figma. So in this video I'm going to be breaking it down into two methods. So I'm going to be showing you how a beginner will approach this particular animation, and I'm going to also show you how a pro designer is going to approach this same animation using components and variants. So you're welcome back. So the first thing we're going to do is to bring in a frame. So for this video, we're using the iPhone 13 mini. Let me quickly rename this to splash screen. And now let's bring in our logo. Let me change this to the design panel. And then let me center this properly. So currently we are actually taking the route of how a beginner will approach this. So we bring in an ellipse. So I'm going to center this properly and change the height of this to 8. So we have something like this. So now that we have something like this and this is properly centered, the next thing we are going to do is to bring in a frame that will host the whole interaction. So let me just bring in a frame that will host the whole entire interaction. So let me center this properly. Let me also center this and center this and push this to the bottom of this particular frame. So now it's currently at the bottom. So now we're going to rename this to let's name it to an animation area. So now I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to make the logo mark stand alone. So let me reduce this. So I want to just show you something. If you are dragging this and you still notice that this other part is showing, then you need to check your clip content if it's actually active. So you need to check this to make sure that this other part won't be visible when you are trying to crop this. So now we're going to center this. Let me zoom in. Now we're going to push this inside of this. So if you notice, it looks like it's going behind of this particular ellipse, which is not what we want. So I'm going to just push this to the front. So I'm taking the logo to the front. So now if you look at it now, look at how it goes in now. It looks like it's going inside of this. So this is what we want to achieve. So now that we've achieved this, the next thing we are going to do now is to duplicate this frame. So let's quickly duplicate this. Now we're going to select this and bring out the logo. So now let me push this to the top and then let me use the scale panel to change this to 80 and push this to the top and make sure that it's centered correctly. Let me just leave it at 40. So now we are going to change this to 0. We are going to change the width of this particular ellipse to 0. And then you see it's still visible here. Still visible here. So we are going to center it. We don't want it to be at the left here. We want the animation to happen that it looks like it's closing into the center. You get, so we are going to push this to the center. So we are going to push this to the center. So now that it's here, we're going to change appearance to 0. So now that we've achieved this, so the next thing we are going to do now is to duplicate this frame. Or first of all, let's quickly prototype this to see how it looks. So let me prototype this quickly. So we are going to change this to after delay and then smart animate. And let's change it to ease in and out. So I'm going to change this to 1. Yeah, this delay aspect, anytime you're using the delay interaction, from my experience, I always leave this at 1 milliseconds. Then I tweak the durations. So I'm going to change this to 800. So now let's quickly play this and see how it goes. So let me play this. Let me preview this. Oh, I think it came out well. So this is what you see. You see the way it's reducing, it's closing. Yeah, so that's why I centered that particular, after making the width 0, that's why I centered it. You get? So this, let's quickly change the prototype setting. Let's change this to the iPhone 13 mini so we can better see what we are doing here. So now it's in a phone mockup. So now that we've achieved this, the next thing we are going to do now, the next thing we are going to do now, we are going to reduce the size of this and put it at the center. So this is when it was not visible. This is when it now pops up and gets bigger. So because here it was like 60 pixels, so it got increased to 80 pixels, and now we want it to go back to the center. So let me quickly reduce this to 40 pixels and then make it center it properly. So let's make sure that it's centered properly. Okay, it's not centered properly because the size here is 380 and the size here is 392. So let's quickly do that. All right, so this is what we want now. So now that it's now centered, let's quickly center it properly. Now let me quickly prototype this also. So we're going to change this to after delay, and then this is going to be 1. This is always going to be 1. And I think the other settings are the same, so I'm just going to leave it at that. So now let's quickly play that and see how it goes. So let me select the effects frame so we can view from the start. Yeah, so that's what we want. This is what we want. So now let me quickly move. So now that we've gotten that, the next thing we're going to do is to duplicate this frame. And then now we can now now we want it to move to the left. Then after moving to the left, then it now displays the entire logo and the letters of the logos also. So now let's change this to hug. So I'll change this to hug and center it properly so that I'll be able to get the distance from this to this. So the distance from the end of this particular frame to the beginning of the logo is 122. So now that we've gotten that, I'm just going to duplicate this. So now this is when the logo is fully formed. But here we are just going to reduce it to just make it so we still have like the logo mark here. So now let me show you something. So you see from here, it wasn't visible. Now we went to the top and got enlarged by 20 pixels. Now it came down to the center of the entire frame. Now we pushed it to the left, and finally it now reveals the entire logo. So now let me quickly prototype the areas we have not prototyped yet. So let's go to the prototyping panel and now push this and then change this to after delay. Sometimes it's good to review what you're doing so you can easily troubleshoot any error you encounter before you do the entire thing and it gets very confusing. You get, so make sure here is always 1 milliseconds and here is like 800. So now we are going to go over this also. So I'm going to change this to after delay also, and then I'm going to change this to 1. So now let's play the entire prototype. Let's play the entire thing. All right. So I kind of like this, but the only issue I have with this is that I don't like the way it slows down when it's going to the left. I don't like the way it slows down when it's going over to the left. So we are going to speed that up a bit. So let me quickly work on that. So now, don't forget, this was the empty state and this was when it went up and got enlarged. And this was when it came down to the middle and this is when it shifted to the left. So now this is the frame we need to edit. We need to edit the frame before it moved to the left. So I'm going to reduce this to half the speed, half the duration. So let's see if that would solve that for us. So let's quickly play that one more time. Okay, yeah. So you see we have, this looks amazing. I think it slowed down a bit there. Let me refresh this one more time. Yes, so that's how a beginner will approach this particular animation. So now we've gotten that. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to show you how a pro is going to approach this particular animation. So for that, we're just going to create a frame. So this frame is going to host the components and variants. So let's change this to components and variants. So we're going to be using components and variants to achieve this. So first of all, we're going to draw the frame that is going to host the animation. That's where the area where everything is going to happen, just like how we created in the other end. So I'm just going to center this properly. And then I'm going to create the ellipse. And then change this to 8. Then push it to the end of this. Let's just make this have like distance of like 40. 40 looks okay. So now that we have this, we are just going to reduce this to only having the logo mark. And I'm going to center it and then push this downwards. Okay, still having that same issue, so I'm just going to push this to the top. So let's call this animation area. So that's the name of this big frame here. So we are just going to push this downwards. All right, so now that we've done that, we're just going to create a component for this and then create a variant. So let me quickly draw this to the bottom. And so now the next thing we are going to do now is to bring out this. Let's bring this out and push it to the top. And then click on K to scale. And I change this to 100. And then I'll just have it have a distance of probably like 20 from the top, which is okay. And now we're going to change the width of this to 0. Don't forget, that's what we did in the other end. And just like the other end, it went to this side. So we are just going to center it and then change the appearance to 0. So you can see this little indication here. That's it. So we're just going to change the appearance to 0. So it's no longer visible. So now that we've already have the states now, we are going to now create the next state where it's now going to come down to the center. It's now going to reduce to 40 pixels at the center. So this is what we are going to do. So I'm going to reduce this to 40 pixels. I'm going to scale it down to 40 and then center it properly. And then I'm going to duplicate this. Now we're going to duplicate it. So in the process of duplicating it now, the next thing we're going to do is to now change this to hog. So changing this to hog now. So we now center this properly and now know the distance between. So it's 80 from here to here. So that's what we have to put in our mind. So let's do the last duplicate. Now let's reduce this to just have, oh no, let's go back. Let me remove this from scale, the scale panel. So let me reduce this. And now let me leave it there. So now this is it. This is how it looks when we use components to do this. So now we are quickly going to prototype this. We're going to prototype the variant. So I'm just going to push this from this to this. And we are going to maintain the same settings. So after delay, don't forget this is always 1 and this is always 800. Is and out. So the other settings are correct. So I'm just going to reduce this and change this to after delay. Then we're going to change this to 1 and make sure that the other end is also. So we're going to change this also. Going to push this. We're going to change this to after delay and change this to 1. So now, I guess this is the part where we need to reduce it to like 400, but we're just going to check it though. Let's not bother about that right now. So let me change this to after delay, change this to 1. And we still have our 800. So now one good thing about this is that creating a component is that you don't have to have like multiple screens. You get, so you're wasting a lot of real estate or areas in your work by having like multiple screens being prototyped. But if you follow this particular process, you just have to just create one screen and just paste your components inside of it. So let's bring in an iPhone 13 mini. So now what we are just going to do, we are just going to bring in this first default state and just drag it inside of our work file. So let's go back and center it properly and center it properly. So now you see we've centered it properly. So let's play this now. Let's see how it goes. So you see how it looks now. We don't have to even do much. We just create the component and then add just that particular one of the variants and just add it here. And that's all. Let's see if we had that same issue of it slowing down while going to the left. Okay, we still have that same issue. So the only thing we just have to do now, we'll just come down here and edit it. So I'll just select this particular variant, which is variant 3. I'm going to go to the prototype menu and select the interaction. And then I'm just going to change this to 400 milliseconds. So now let's now play this again. So here you have it. Let me play this in a larger screen. So now this is simple. This is exactly what we want. So if you've stayed up until this time, thank you so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and drop a comment if you find this video very helpful. Thank you. See you in my next video.